Hello, I want to share some thoughts from this book, Becoming the Best Version of Humanity. This is a book that is meant to help you discover the one best way to know yourself and live your life so that you can achieve the highest expression of your humanity. Rather than living a life according to the confines of man-made stereotypes with self-limiting beliefs that make you think you cannot be something, you cannot do something, you cannot have something. With this book, you are supposed to think that in the absence of the effects of upbringing, exposure, your environment, or having a sense of a stereotype, you are a human being like all other human beings on the face of this earth with human potential to do what is humanly possible, to be what is humanly possible, and to have what is humanly possible. And I have been very careful with my choice of words. I have been very intentional in the use of the words becoming the best version of humanity. Rather than saying that you should become the best version of yourself. Popularly, we like to think that we need to become the best version of ourselves. We encourage people to be the best version of themselves. But the challenge with asking people to be the best versions of themselves is that we are not sure what this self is or what this sense of self is. So we cannot tell what you think about yourself. If, for instance, you are thinking of yourself based on your exposure or your upbringing or your environment, and that determines what you think you can be, you can do, and you can have. And I tell you to become the best version of yourself. I don't think that I'm encouraging you to become all that you could be. But if you see yourself as a human being, we have seen what the human being is capable of doing and being and having. We have seen human exploits, human innovations, and we don't know the exact limits of what the human being can be or do or have based on the human potential. All human beings belong to the human species. All human beings belong to the human race. All human beings are coming from one source. Whether that source is evolution or that source is creation by God, the fact remains the same, that the human being is coming from one source. And you are one of such human beings. So if you were to judge yourself by your humanity, we don't know what you can be, what you can do, what you can have based on the human potential that you have. But if you were to judge yourself by your upbringing, your exposure, your environment, your stereotype, if you were to judge yourself by your profession, your educational level, if you were to look at you in terms of your race or ethnicity, your gender, your age, and many other forms of stereotype, then it means that you're supposed to have a life that is characteristic of your exposure, your upbringing, your environment, or a stereotype that you belong to. That is why we talk about you becoming the best version of your humanity rather than becoming the best version of yourself. This book is divided into three parts or three sections. The first part or the first section talks about the human reality. So it describes the human being from the perspective of mainly psychology, as in who the human being is in terms of the human personality, in terms of the human self-concept, and so on and so forth. So if you take a snapshot of every human being at any particular point in time, we are going to realize that you have a personality, a consistent way of thinking, feeling, and behaving, and you have a way of thinking about yourself, your self-concept. That is true for every human being. That is the first reality I've tried to establish in the first part of the book. The second reality I've tried to establish is that because the human personality is created by genes and upbringing that are not perfect, we know that the human personality is not perfect. Why do we say that the genes are not perfect? For instance, if you take human diseases, we know that there are diseases that run in families. It means that you inherit genes that can predispose you to certain diseases. So we know that hypertension, diabetes, some cancers, and many other diseases run in families. If somebody has sickle cell disease, that person got that from parents. So you can inherit genes that can predispose you to certain diseases. That includes mental health diseases. We know that some mental health illnesses or diseases run in families. It's the same with behaviors. We know that you can inherit genes that can determine your behaviors. So some people have what we call temperaments. Some people are melancholic, they are phlegmatic, they are choleric, and there are some people we describe as being sanguines. And we know that your genes play a role in the forming of these personalities. And that's why we see people and then their physical features and behaviors look like their parents or their relatives. So you can inherit genes that can give you a personality. Some can be responsible for some behaviors, like the temperaments, which we know have strengths and weaknesses. So based on your genes, we are supposed to think that you are not perfect when it comes to your personality. And then also upbringing is also not perfect. We know that when you are born as a baby, you are exposed to a family, then to a school system or an educational system, some beliefs, religious beliefs, traditional beliefs, cultural beliefs, the media, you have peers or colleagues, all having an influence in your formation or your upbringing. People involved in our education, in our indoctrination, religiously, culturally, in the media, and so on, they are not perfect. So they give us both the bad and the good. So then you form opinions, form mentalities, form mindsets that are not perfect, yet they are responsible for how you think. And as a man thinks, so is he. So they are responsible for how you manifest as a human being. That is not to scare you, to make you think that there's something wrong with you, but is to encourage you to recreate yourself. So now you are taking over the driving seat to recreate the kind of person and the kind of life that you want. The second part of the book talks about a possible ideal person that you should become, or a possible ideal life that you could have or you should have. Because you cannot talk about people's realities, who you are, how you became who you are, as discussed by psychology, for instance, without telling them what they could become or what a human being could become or the best possible version of a human being that they could aspire to become. So that's what I try to do in the second part. Give you an idea about the best possible option of an ideal person or an ideal life. And the third part of this book talks about how you can bridge the gap between this reality, which is your imperfect personality, your imperfect self-concept, and that possible ideal that we discussed in the second part. So this third part is trying to help you narrow the gap between your reality and the possible ideal. And the goal is not to become a perfect human being, which nobody can become, but it takes you away from the life that you have now, which is not the ideal, to a possible ideal. So what this book is trying to help you to do is to help you to create yourself. And that is possible because I remember a quote that somebody said, Alan Watts, he said that the you that you think you are does not exist. So what you call you or yourself exists only in your mind. So personality is not static. You can shift it from the negative towards the positive. So the you that you think you are does not exist. You can always create the kind of person that you want to be and call that person you. But this new person or this new life that you're trying to create by yourself should not be limited by your exposure, by your environment, by kind of upbringing, by you having a sense of belonging to a man-made stereotype. And that is why you have to think of yourself as a human being with human potential, like all other human beings on the face of this earth, who can be, do, and have what is humanly possible. If you do that, then it is possible to work towards achieving the highest expression of your humanity.